Hey bodybuilding fans, what's going on? John Boss here, reporting here for Inside Natural Bodybuilding from the 2015 INBA PNBA Team Universe. And obviously if you come to something like this, you're going to run into six-time natural Mr. Olympia, Kiyoshi Moody. Kiyoshi, what's going on tonight? What do we got you doing?
I'm doing good, but I want to correct you on one thing real quick. It's actually the Team US, INBA, PNBA Team USA, not Team Universe, because Team Universe is in the MPC. But actually, I'm a guest. I'm a guest judge here today, this evening, just judging the open amateurs, whether it's bodybuilding, physique, and the pro bodybuilding men. But that's what I really came here because I wanted to see the up and comers and who's going to be competing in the open pro at the Natural Olympia.
Very cool. So last year, obviously, you notched another one for yourself in front of Justin Figuera and Michael Waddington. This year, it sounds like you were just telling me there's going to be quite the, shift in competitors. A lot of big names coming into the mix, and it sounds like you were tempted to compete, but it's probably not going to be something you'll be doing this year. But who you're predicting is going to take it away?
I was thinking about competing because of the lineup that was actually coming in. And I know that's what the fans want to see. But, after I found out a couple people weren't going to be coming, I said, you know what, I'm good. I don't have no problem stepping away. But you know what, I think, honestly, I can name the top 5 maybe. I can't predict it. I know Rico's coming in to do it. I say Rico, Martin Daniels, Justin Figuera, Michael Waddington, and Mishak Ochang. I want to say that's probably your top 5 right there. I wouldn't be surprised. There's 2 more competitors, Marcus Jefferson, which he's been doing really, really well, and Obi, which is Obi's out. Obi's actually from Australia. Last time I saw him, he looked really, really big, really, really hard. So, I would say those 5 right there. My pick, it's going to be hard to say, but, Rico's hard to beat. He brings that conditioning. Martin brings that good symmetry in the size. The Australians, you never know what they're going to bring. You just have to wait till they come over to the States. So, either way, it'll be a very, 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 very good show.
Very cool. Nice. There's a lot of hype around Mishak, and he actually had, I guess some people probably argue, a disappointing 4th place finish last year. What do you think he needs to do to finally become natural Mr. Olympia?
You know what? It's his size. I'd be damned if I'd be lying to you if I say it's not, but it is his size, and that's the only thing that's going to hold him back. But this year, they're actually at the Natural Olympia, the pro men, they're going to have height classes this year, whether it's going to be short, medium, tall, or just short and tall. That right there, once you start breaking down that class a little bit more, you could actually, if you have 2 or 3 people on stage, opposed to like 5 or 6 or 7, it's a little bit different. So when you actually have 2 or 3 people on stage, you could actually pick out their flaws, whether it's short, medium, tall. But, it's going to be hard. It'll be hard for him because of his height. I really like him because he has full muscle bellies. And it's just, if he can nail his conditioning, and I go back to like Rico style conditioning. Rico to me has one of the best conditioning bodies in natural bodybuilding. And if Mishak could bring that type of conditioning, he'll be hard to beat. Very, very.
Sure. So it sounds like we won't be seeing you on stage. I know yourself, typical fashion is to, prep in the last several months before and suddenly pull out this amazing physique and win. I'd say we're getting a little too close probably to pull that off this year. But Rico himself asked me to ask you when we will see you on stage next as a Masters Pro. Is that something we're going to see?
I've always thought about it. And, right now, at this point in time, I'm not even thinking about competing. After I found out that Cleveland wasn't going to compete, and some other people, I said, I stepped back. I really had to think about, what I'm doing with my life. And as far as I see all these guys that take time off, like your Doug Miller, Rico's taking time off. All these top guys, Cleveland has taken time off. I haven't taken any time off in the last 9 years. So, this actually feels good, not be able to compete and just lift when I want to lift. And, I can lift heavy, I can lift light, it doesn't matter, eat what I want to eat. And, just in the last 2 months, I put on a lot of size really quick. And that's coming after softball season. But as far as, when I'm going to compete again, maybe I can tell you this. It'll be less than 5 years, maybe. But it will be in the Masters, if they let me.
Very cool. So if they let you, it's because they're probably predicting domination, which Rico goes, does he think it's fair that he'll be able to dominate that division?
It's if I do come back, let's just say it's my 5th year, if I decide to come back, I'll be 50 years old. I'm already 45 now, so, a lot of these guys, even like, Doug Miller, they're in their 30s, right? They're in their 30s.
Marshall.
You know, I think Marshall's the only one that's consistently, you know, winning and doing very, very well at his age. And I give him props. You know, and me being 45, it's hard. It's very, very hard to come back year after year after year and bring that top level conditioning and, you know, being ready for a show every single time. It's hard. So I take my hands off to him. There's not too many people can do it. If I do it, it'll be when I'm 50.
Gotcha. So obviously the Natural Olympia comes with, I would say, a more sizable prize purse than some of the other events. But at the end of the day, we also know it's very tough to try and make a living in this sport. And you mentioned kind of taking a little time to focus on yourself and some other things. What is maybe some advice you'd have for other people if you could go back, 15, 20 years from now and kind of mapped out how you were going to, be such a high-level competitor but also do other things to just kind of facilitate, making a living doing this, basically?
You know what? Social media. 15 years ago, we didn't have social media. It was before Facebook and Instagram. It was MySpace. Before MySpace, it was nothing. So now that, you see all these, YouTube videos that come out, you see all these, as far as like Instagram, Facebook, there's so much social media out nowadays that you have a lot of these companies that that are Europa, bodybuilding.com, Muscle Tech. They're not so much concerned about how many shows you've won, what you are, who you are. They're they're really following how many followers you have, really social media. So if I actually had to go back, I can't say 15 years, but I would say, pretty close to it. I would really concentrate on, your social media, how you, how people look at you, because actually some of these guys make a very, very good living, not so much bodybuilding, but, I'll give you a good example, Lane Norton, he's a good bodybuilder. Was he the greatest bodybuilder? No, but he's a good bodybuilder, but he found a niche. And, a couple of years ago, I saw him doing a commentary on at the INB Olympia, and I'm just like sitting there like, he's a doctor, he has his PhD, and this all stems from, doing what he does, which is fitness, which is bodybuilding, which is powerlifting. So that's like, something like that. You have a Raymond Carrito, the online coach. Raymond hasn't competed in the last 2 years. He competes every now and then, but his niche is doing online stuff. He markets himself well. He gets out there, he gets out to the public, he gets out to his fans. So, nowadays, that's like the biggest thing that, a lot of these guys that are coming in, you got to be able to market yourself very, very well. Go out to these companies, show them how many followers you have and what you can do for that company to really try to make a living out of doing fitness.
So what are some of the things that are maybe in the works for you if you take a few years now to kind of focus on just kind of building other things? Is there anything you want to share, or that's stuff that's under the wraps? Or?
Oh, nothing's under the wraps. I can tell you right now, I've been following Raymond a lot, and I really like what he does with, he has his gym out in Temecula, the campus gym, and it's a really something special, and I'm really looking to do something like that where, I do have a team, I do online coaching, but, to his degree, no. The other day I was listening to one of his videos, and he always talks about consistency. That's something that I haven't been good at. I'm not good at consistency as far as like putting out YouTube videos every single day. When I was doing it, people were watching it, but I fell off the wagon. So, I'm really trying to, develop what I need to do, and I'm really looking at and doing a lot of research of how they're doing things and what they're actually doing, so that way I can build my clientele and build something that, I don't have to worry about. I can just have people come see me. They can do this, just like, his gym. I want to be a Lane Norton. I want to be a Raymond Carrito. These guys I really look up to because they're doing something that they love to do, and it's real flexible with their time.
That's awesome. So where are we going to see you next? Obviously, I think it's, any of these big shows, they want you there. They want you on the judging panel, etc. But obviously you got your daughter, you got your family, you got other stuff going on. Where will we see you next? Just kind of roundabout, just INBA shows? Or
this is something that I had a big problem with this year, is with balancing my life. And that's something that I've been really thinking about in the last month, 2 months, that, even though it's softball season with my daughter, you still have to have a somewhat of a balance of balancing bodybuilding, fitness, in with my daughter. That's something that I've never been good at. Once it's softball season, I completely step away from bodybuilding. Everybody knows that. Darren Steen, of course, knows that very, very well. I step away from bodybuilding. But this coming year, I'm really gonna actually try to balance most of it out as much as I can, you know. So the time I mean, the next time you'll see me is, you know, I'll be at the Natural Olympia. Hopefully, I believe I'm taking over Mike Newman's job because Mike was actually coming out there, you know, to do the interviews. But I asked Denny and Diana, you know, way ahead of time, that is there any possible way that I could actually do the interview this year? And, you know, from what they told me, they said yes. But, you know, things can change, which I really wanted to do because, you know, I watched the IFBB Olympias, the Pro Press Conference, and I've been involved with ours the last couple of years, and it's been fun, especially when, you know, the jawing goes back and forth, but it's fun jawing. So, you know, it's fun to find out people's past and how many shows they've won, or if they've had any beef with a certain team. It's kind of good to bring that up. Right. You know, just like, you know, myself and Darren Steed, you know, we did a couple years ago. It actually, you know, it helps people out, and, you know, it brings people to watch it more, and it gets people more involved. Right. So it'll be the Natural Olympia.
Gotcha. So since we got Darren Steed on the topic, I was actually going to hit Darren up real quick right before this interview and see if he had any questions to stir the pot a little bit. But any words you'd like to say? Any comments? Or I know he's been doing. Actually, I think he did quite well on the show just this past weekend. Whatever.
You know what? I can say this. You know what? He's another guy. He's another guy. You know, me and Darren always had beef. You know, I have no problem with him. You know, with Darren, you know, he's over 50 years old, and my hat's off to him too. You know, it's very, very hard. You know, and I really think about this guy a lot because, you know, he has his 2 daughters. He's a family man. You know, he takes care of his daughters, and he does so much with bodybuilding and you know, with his fitness. So, you know, he did a great job in the last. I know he just competed. You know, he did a great job. You know, he shows me pictures online. He looks great. You know, and I take my hats off to him because he's at the age, you know, where a lot of people, like, you know, even myself, where they start, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to compete anymore. I don't want to work out anymore, and they get big and fat. Yeah. You know, with Darren, it looked like his condition just got better. Yeah. You know, sure. Will I beat him in a back double bicep right now? I can tell you right now, hell no. I can tell you right now, yeah, Darren, you go get me right now. Yeah. But you know he stays in condition right now. Am I in condition? I can't. No, I'm not in condition. Yeah. You know, so, you know, hats off to him. You know, he's doing his thing. You know, let's props to him.
Well, we're here at the 2015 Team USA, got it correct this time, with 6-time Natural Mr. Olympia Kiyoshi Moody. Look for him at the Natural Olympia in attendance and perhaps on a Masters Pro stage in the future. Until next time, we're here with Inside Natural Bodybuilding. Thanks for watching.